Hello, and welcome to episode number 38 of the IoT Weekly podcast, brought to you by GearForge Software. Wait a minute. You were supposed to start.
I was like, what are you doing, Matthew?
Whoops. Oh, no.
Hello, you're listening to the IoT Weekly podcast.
Hello, and welcome to episode number 38 of the IoT Weekly podcast, brought to you by GearForge Software. My name is Cliff, and I'm joined by my co-hosts and good friends, Matthew and Zainab. Hey, guys.
Howdy.
Hi.
Hi. So, Matthew, what have you been up to?
I have been on a kick, a deep dive into Vim.
Really?
Yes. I know, Cliff, I know you know what Vim is, but I'll explain it anyway for the listeners. So
Go
Vim
ahead.
It is a classic text editor that runs in a console. It's like all text, basically. And it's been around forever in some form or another. And it remains super popular. I've been on just a kick with this thing. Partly, so it's what I use when I need to do some work on a server, for example. So it's pretty useful, but it's also just super geeky, and I love that. So
I realize, I'm like, how deep can you dive into Vim, for God's sake?
Well, here's the thing. It is
Are you going to override the WQ command?
No, you could, but it is insanely powerful. And I was inspired by a couple of YouTube videos that I put into the show notes in case people are as geeky as I am and want to check this out. But one of them's by Damian Conway. He is I would call him one of the wizards of the Perl programming community. I've just been kind of working my way gradually through some of their conference videos, and I ran into this one. And Damian Conway is a genius, I think. And he has just the most insane Vim setup you've ever seen. If you want to see somebody who has gone way over the edge with something geeky, you got to watch that video, because he has 80,000 lines of Vim configuration, and his Vim is it's insane. It's like a Mercedes and a tank at the same time. It's incredible.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and basically you can do everything in Vim that you could do in something like Visual Studio Code, and like 10 times more, without ever touching a mouse. And that's actually the part that is interesting to me, is I spend a lot of time programming, and I find I often have to move my right hand off of the keyboard
Yep.
to use the mouse,
Yeah.
which slows me down, basically. And so what I'm trying to train myself to do is use Vim key commands. So, for example, I use Visual Studio Code for my work, and I've got a plugin that basically allows me to use the Vim keyboard combinations, and I'm trying to force myself to use those so I don't have to, slow down so much, basically. But these two videos are just, if you're geeky and you're into this kind of thing, they're just really fun.
So how many, your Vim config, how many lines do you have in it, Matthew, now?
Mine is short. It's like 50 lines. Maybe.
Okay, and I'll contest, I've never even opened up my Vim config, so mine has whatever's default in the config.
Yes, which is nothing.
So I have nothing.
Zero. Yes.
Okay. Zainab, have you also been diving deep into Vim?
Absolutely. Is that like a pool or something?
It is, yes. It's right next to,
yes.
yes.
Yeah, we have a large one here. It's called the Vim Mediterranean. It's great. It's been very warm.
You refer to that as a pool?
A pool.
Yes, we do have a large pool nearby. It's called the Mediterranean.
Yes.
The size of two countries, why not?
Yes,
No,
sure.
I've just been munching on ice cream and pizza like you're a regular student.
So is that ice cream and pizza? Or is that ice cream pizza?
on the pizza? Or is it ice cream pizza, like Matthew said?
Well, if I did that, then my dog would just chow down on my chocolate ice cream because she loves pizza so much. So I'd rather not. But she's been helping me get through a minor illness, and it's been fun having her around because she never sticks around otherwise. So.
And Zainab, you are in Tunisia. How is the temperature there these days?
Oh, I should have mentioned this. Okay. This is an interesting story. We woke up one day. It was wonderful weather. 2 hours later, it got super cloudy, thick clouds, and it started raining. And we thought, okay, why not? And then it suddenly, very quickly, turns into one of those Bollywood rainy weather romantic scene kind of rain where you cannot see 10 feet ahead of you. And then these hails the size of golf balls, spiky golf balls, start falling everywhere. Next thing we know, our like 50 feet tree just fell down across the street.
Whoa.
It was a very interesting moment. We were just looking at it from the balcony, just falling like, whoa, straight for the neighbors.
I bet that was spectacular.
Yeah.
It was spectacular on the street. It was legendary. We wanted to take selfies.
Did it stop raining, or is it still raining, Zainab?
It is still raining on and off. I have to say it's actually colder than St. Cloud, which is saying something because we're in Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So.
But do you have is it seasonal? Is it sort of there's a rainier season and then dry season, or does it not really matter?
Well, there's more variety than Minnesota. There's an actual spring here and an actual fall. But we're just starting off the kind of the flood seasons, the flood years, because we just ended the drought years, and so it's a bit crazier.
So you're moving into flood season now?
Yep. Well, by flood season I mean the next 4 years, but there's still like fall and spring.
So are you getting ready to head into fall here soon, or?
It's starting to happen.
Okay.
A little earlier than usual, but yeah. I mean, I don't even know if St. Cloud has fall. I remember it was like 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's the leaves are starting to change, and it was at the other morning. It was 53 degrees, and I could see my breath when I took the dogs out.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So it's already starting to get cold here, and the Farmer's Almanac is saying it's going to be miserable this year.
Oh, good.
Ooh, they say that every year.
Yeah, they do.
Yes. So, Cliff, what about you? What have you been up to?
Oh, well, back to Python, my second favorite language, and back to prototyping some solenoids. And funny as it goes, so we're up to about 10 different solenoids at this point. Part of the problem is the mechanical engineer doesn't have a way to actually measure. Well, he probably could, but it'd probably take us longer than actually just ordering more solenoids. Measuring the actual weight of what these have to deal with, because every time we change it, we're also changing design and things like that as we incrementally make adjustments to this prototype that we're building from an IoT standpoint. And so, of course, we find a solenoid that is it's kicking butt, Matthew. Really good, solid solenoid. Got it from a great supplier here in the U.S. They well-known. So I was like, yep, we're good. It's not like I'm buying it off of Amazon or something like that. It's a good company. So I mean, all the right things you're supposed to do, right, Matthew?
Yep, ticks the boxes.
Yep. And so I was only buying one at a time because I think like I said, we went through about 10 of these now to find the right one. And so we went back to order a couple more, and they're out. Even though like 2 weeks ago they had 40.
Yeah, of course.
So I had to call up the supplier and say, hey, I need one by next week, and then I need another 12 by mid-September at the shortest time. Can you help me out with this? So they're talking to their expediter to see if they can't get the manufacturer to produce some of these things for us, because they had nothing on order at the time that I called them up.
Otherwise, what's the turnaround time?
Well, I found a place in Hong Kong, but I've ordered stuff from that before, and they didn't quite turn out to be the same thing.
Yeah, I've heard that story before.
So I'm a little hesitant. Otherwise, it's 11-week lead time, and I mean that's brutal. I mean that puts us way outside of the season. I mean that I'm gonna have to find another solenoid at that point.
Yeah. So what do you think, Cliff? We've been reporting on shortages. Do you think this is related to that?
I do wonder if it's not related to some of the shortages we're starting to see.
Yeah.
It's just surprising because when I spoke to the supplier, she's like, actually, we haven't had a shortage in a long time.
Interesting.
Yep. So, and this is something we've been discussing because of all the different IoT products. It's really pulling a demand on some of these sensors and all your basic components they're getting tugged and pulled in a lot more directions now.
Yeah, and I'd expect that's just going to continue to grow.
Yep. So next time I'm buying 18 of them and say screw it.
Good plan.
And she even told me, she goes, yeah, somebody in July made like a huge order. I was like, can you just call them up and ask if we could buy one off of them? And she's like, oh, we can't do that.
Oh.
There's like a HIPAA for business apparently.
Oh, apparently. Great.
Yeah. So that's where that's at. Hey, Zainab.
Yeah.
Did we get any feedback?
Not exactly, but I can really tell people enjoy puppies and drone umbrellas.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've been getting a lot of reactions for drone umbrellas, which is very exciting. But if you do have feedback, which please let us know, you can always shoot us a message at podcast@gearforgesoftware.com, or you can find us on Twitter at GearForgeIoT. We'll be there. We're posting every day. It's pretty fun around.
So if I've got a puppy pic, I should send it to you because we got a new puppy.
Yes, I was going to ask you about that. I think it would be great to have Chewie on the Twitter page.
Okay. Yeah, I got a picture of him and Yoda sleeping together, so that was a big shocker.
Oh, that is amazing. And then we can add Brenda and it'll be a great party.
Yeah.
Zainab, how many followers do we have now on Twitter?
We have around 1,150.
Wow, nice.
Which is very exciting, I think.
That is
growing steady.
Yeah, well, didn't we start out with like 7?
Well, technically 4, because the 3 of us were kind of following as well, so.
Well, and Matthew, we've had thousands and thousands of downloads of the podcast.
That is fantastic. Love to hear it.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I mean, it's just thousands and thousands. Pretty soon we'll hit our 10,000 mark, so we're doing pretty good.
It's
Are we
amazing.
going to do another IoT podcast, an IoT button giveaway for the 10,000 download?
Maybe if Matthew wants to give up his AT&T button that I'm going to be bringing him this weekend.
Oh, maybe. Yeah.
I've got a pristine. Actually, I've got something else we can give away too if we wanted to. So,
Fun.
community news. This leads right into it. So Matthew shared with me an industrial Raspberry Pi. I'm going to put the link in here, but it's by embeddedpi.com. It's pretty cool for those of you that are a little bit more concerned about, hey, I like the Pi, I just can't operate my stuff in a 3 to 5 volt or something like that situation, and you want to operate it in more of your 12 to 24, let's say 12 to 18 volt scenarios, which is more of the industrial range. This is pretty slick. I'd recommend taking a look at it. I'm pretty happy with it. It's got a lot of cards, specifically with like Modbus and your other 232 and some of the other typical scenarios you might want to communicate with it. Plus, it's got some cards specifically for some of your analogs, so your 4 to 20 milliamp signals. I would take a look. I definitely think it's really interesting. The other one I wanted to share with folks is IoT in a Box. If you guys haven't heard of this one yet, really interesting company. I actually got an IoT in a Box behind me. So, I mean, we can actually give that away, guys. It's kind of cool. It's like you can actually get these things. They actually have a reseller program too. So if you guys are interested in selling some components that are ready and available, I'd suggest taking a look at IoT in a Box. So
Yeah,
pretty cool. We've talked with them a few times.
Basically, the IoT in a Box concept is they sort of prepackage everything you need to be able to support specific use cases, right? That's the idea.
Yeah. We've got, I want to say the refrigeration module is the one that we have, Matthew, along with the gateway and everything else. So it's pretty slick, I believe is the one we have. They've got a 30-day, no money, 60-day guarantee, 100%. If the device doesn't work, you send it back. So they stand by their products. Do we have a show sponsor, Matthew?
No,
Dang
we don't.
Could we get one?
Well, hold on. Maybe we do.
Oh, can we borrow a show sponsor?
Yes. Yes, in fact, I think our show sponsor is GearForge Software. GearForge Software, does that sound familiar?
It does.
I think so.
GearForge Software is an IoT consultant that works with companies that are ready to make their company smart. If you're looking for a partner that will live, eat, and breathe your project, then look no further than GearForge Software. And you can learn more at gearforgesoftware.com. All right, and that brings us to the news. We have a lot of great stuff this week. Starting off with what, I always love a security article.
Yeah.
And this one I thought was super interesting, and that is, it's an article in Tech Republic about a smart plug, basically.
Oh, sure.
That is maybe not so smart. So this is related to, so smart plugs are little electrical outlets that you plug into the actual outlet, but then it allows you to connect a phone or something, right? So you can control, so let's say lights or whatever it is, right, to turn it on and off remotely. So in this case, let's see, this is a Belkin device, the Wemo Insight Smart Plug had basically a known flaw. It was an unreported buffer overflow in one of the libraries on the device, and researchers were able to basically take total control of that device. Now, that in and of itself is not super interesting. So you think about a smart plug, it's like, well, so you could, you'd be kind of maybe perplexed why your lights were turning on and off randomly.
Mm-hmm.
But how, what problem does that really cause? Probably not a lot, but the big problem there is that smart plug is on your network. And if somebody can gain access to the smart plug, now they're on your network. And so then they would be able to, usually your security arrangements, you have sort of much more protection, or you're more guarded against what's outside your network, right? You don't want things to be able to get onto your network, but once they're on, they kind of have free reign. So that's really the problem with this. So this is sort of theoretical, but the attack is not, right? The plug is definitely vulnerable, and you could basically do a pretty trivial attack to get access to the plug, and now you're on the network. From there, it's not so clear what the attack vectors are, but basically what attackers need first is a way into the network, and here they have one. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
That is super interesting and somewhat problematic. So do you have a smart plug at your house, Matthew?
I have no smart plugs. My plugs are all dumb.
Yeah, mine too.
Yeah. The reality is, even though I'm a tech guy and I love technology and I think this stuff is cool, for my own personal life, I prefer not to have as much. And the reason why is because I don't want to have to update it all.
Yeah, I can see that being a big problem. I mean, I get the whole, I was looking up after the interesting IoT products episodes we had. I was looking at it, and a smart plug, what do you need that for? Lighting your Christmas tree on and off in a rhythmic way? I don't exactly get it.
See, to me, it feels like a gimmick for home use. It really is in the business where it starts to get interesting, right? Where some of these IoT solutions where, if you could, I think about the grocery store where you walk down the aisle and the lights in the case are off and they turn on when you walk by, right?
Yep, and that makes total sense to me.
Yeah, it's a huge power savings.
Yep, right? Massive amounts of money or savings and just overall energy conservation.
Having, my plug for my Christmas tree connected to a phone doesn't make any sense to me. So to me, sometimes the home use feels a little gimmicky.
I would agree.
And like I said, it's maybe more work to keep these things up to date than it's worth.
Yep.
All right. So Cliff, what do we have up next?
One of the goals here I wanted to have is try to get a few business articles in here besides some of the techie stuff, Matthew.
Mm-hmm.
So this one here, I want to say thank you, Zainab, for finding this one here, but it's 5 areas where IoT is having the most business impact. And I think the fun part is we could probably talk through quite a few of these actually, as far as we get through. So number one is product optimization. And so what let's talk through here is really specifically within the actual manufacturing aspect of things. And what we know is that definitely manufacturing, we're seeing a lot of opportunities specifically for IoT. So and I talk to folks probably every week, if not every other week, around manufacturing. And tons of folks are really interested in the problem most folks are having right though now, Matthew and Zainab, is just trying to get the daggone prototype out the door.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Yeah, they're just struggling with it just because the fact that a lot of folks they just don't have the capability or understanding of how to bring all these things together. And so a lot of them are trying to do like these massive ones, and they really they're better off to start small. So that's probably the best spot. But I always ask it when you're talking to manufacturing, there's two ways to look at it. Either A, you're trying to increase your top line. So let's say when I say increase top line, what I mean is you're probably creating a new revenue stream, right, for the business.
Mm-hmm.
So looking across the board and saying, all right, from an IoT standpoint, how can I possibly create a new revenue stream for the company? And that's one of the big areas we're seeing right now. One of the secondary areas is how do I improve my bottom line? And I don't mean my butt. I'm talking about the actual improve your overall margins, right? So, and when I mean margins, it's like I'm going to decrease cost so that way my net profit or my EBITDA can improve. So that's the other side is folks looking at it to say, all right, we've got quality issues here, or how do we improve predictive maintenance and going about it in that way. And we've talked to, I talked to someone earlier this week about that, and they're kicking off they've got just a really bare bones project going on, but then they've identified 35 spots within their company where they feel like predictive maintenance could assist them.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it goes beyond predictive maintenance. Even what we were just talking about, just having a computer be able to turn on and off the lights,
Yeah,
or smart thermostats or whatever it is. In a home use, it's a small savings. But if you were running, think about like a university campus, right? Think of what a difference that would be if you could control, basically smart power, smart heating, whatever.
Yeah. Well, and think about specifically for if you're a large, I don't know, go back to your university or even a hospital, and you've got to maintain medications at a certain temperature. Having a person go in there 3 times a day, let's say, and track the temperature, I mean, you're probably looking at $30,000 to $50,000 in human cost at least annually.
Absolutely.
But if you had an actual IoT device that was capable of doing that, that's a cost savings. You could take that person and have them do something that a human should be doing.
Well, and we're working with a customer that very much is in that is in that exact position with a new IoT device right now, where basically the current system is pen and paper, and the new system is essentially all digital because there's a bunch of basically note taking that now the device can do. Right?
Yeah.
It doesn't need a person with a clipboard anymore.
And I think that rolls right into number 2, where they talk about supply chain management, Matthew. I know what you're describing is different, but this one here is kind of showcasing Amazon, right?
Yeah.
But beyond that, just understanding how things are flowing through from a supply chain is a huge opportunity.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and I think that it does speak to the same point, right? There's currently a lot of manual work that goes into managing that, just tracking stuff, right?
Yep.
And some of that can go away with IoT.
Well, and I know in a warehouse, trying to find folks to do stocking, that is not an awesome job.
No.
And the turnover rate is extremely high in those type of roles. And in today's job market, it makes it even tougher.
Absolutely.
So another one, asset tracking and management. So 74% of the respondents, this is a Forbes article, by the way, said that asset tracking and management was a large priority for their companies. So a lot of them are like, hey, how do we have an understanding of inventory of assets, where important items are located at from an equipment standpoint and things like that. And this one here is pretty straightforward as far as the IoT is concerned. I mean, I think this is one of those easy wins in my opinion.
No, I agree.
So, and then the other one that they're talking about is financial decision making.
Oh, that's interesting. Give me some more information on that.
Yeah, I was a little surprised at this one. So that and this one might be a little bit of a stretch, but maybe not. But really, it was about how do you take, let's say, for a power company, and understanding the capability to forecast and model power generation and distribution network, and be able to take that and be able to make financial decisions off of that.
Hmm.
I mean, it reminds me. I mean, that's a bit of a stretch, I think, compared to some of these other ones. So this one's a little bit much. This is much more complicated, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I
So
mean,
I
I would
think,
definitely. I'm sorry. You were
no, go
saying.
ahead.
I was definitely kind of expecting CRM to be there instead of financial decision making because it's much easier to track customers than to track money with IoT.
Well, interesting enough, number 5 is customer experience.
Oh, there it is.
So, yep, you're spot on. It's right below that. And this one here had an example of Caterpillar. So they're looking at incorporating IoT and other digital technologies into their equipment. So think of like a locomotive or an industrial generator or construction or mining equipment. So they've got over 560,000 vehicles that are now collecting and transmitting data to their owners.
Wow.
Question is like, what are the owners actually doing with that data?
Right. Yeah, and I think there will be a data overwhelm happen, right, as more of these systems come online.
And I actually was reading another article the other day, Matthew, and it's a company specifically, all they do is you can import data and be able to understand and try to track it to figure out stuff from it.
Mm-hmm.
1/3 of their users, their new users, abandon their platform because they have no idea how to interpret the data.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, it's not the simplest thing in the world.
Nope. So they were thinking it'd be super easy. You put all these graphs and stuff like that. They said, yeah, they made great graphs, but they didn't know what to do with the information they had then.
Well, with data, it's always like there are like 3 levels. There's sort of the raw data, right? Which the use of that is, there isn't really one.
No.
Right? And then there's aggregated data, but you've got to know how to aggregate it and what's going to make sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's actually, when you get to the point where it's like, now we understand what that aggregated data is and how it's useful, and now we can display it as a report or something like that, right? Visualize it in some way. But without understanding that second level, you can't get to the third level. Like just putting data on a graph means nothing.
Not at all. And if you don't have the concept behind of it, good luck.
Exactly. Well, and we used to use Microsoft, their Cube technology at a former business, which was frankly pretty awesome. But the best thing about that was basically you could sort of explore the data, right? So you'd fire up Excel and you could pull in a bunch of stuff into a pivot table and then explore it. And as you explored, you started to realize the connections between things, right? It's like, oh, you could see things that you wouldn't normally, like, I don't even know how you would go into the data to know that opportunity was there, right? Without some means of being able to explore it. But it kind of highlights the fact that it's not as simple as, oh yeah, there's just data, now look at it. You know?
Well, even with that exploration though, if you don't know what to do with that, if you don't know the business well enough, you're still gonna have problems.
Well, but it's even more than that, because we had a team behind the scenes that was actually building out, all of that, essentially the aggregation for all of that, and they had to understand the business, because they were the ones who were making, like, basically they were aggregating it or creating the ETLs to aggregate it in such a way that it would pull in and make some sense. Because the raw, you can't just take the raw data and say, okay, now make sense of it. It doesn't work that way. A human has to sort of understand what they're looking for. So yeah.
So great article. Thanks, Sign Up, for finding this one. But this is spot on. I mean, this is the world of what that we're seeing right now from a consulting standpoint.
Yeah, it definitely resonates, doesn't it?
It does.
So Zainab, what's going on in the U.S. airports?
Well, what can I say? It's the good old waiting lines. So basically, I feel like I should start the story from the beginning. So basically, what happened is the DC Dulles Airport. Is that how you pronounce it?
Dulles, yeah.
Dulles. Okay. They installed a new facial recognition tech. And 3 days later, they spot the first imposter, and they're testing it in, I believe, 5 airports, if I'm not wrong. And basically, the U.S. Customs and Border Protection, they had a 26-year-old man from apparently Brazil, fooling people with a French passport, got close to an officer, used the facial comparison biometric technology, or what it is labeled, and it didn't match his face. And he turned out to be a citizen of the Republic of Congo, and he left his ID in his shoe.
Really?
I found that very creative. But I mean, the whole article is about what this technology can do for airports, and the fact that it could actually shorten waiting times and waiting lines for international flights, which are just horrendous. They're by the hours, especially if you're going to the U.S. You have to wait 3 hours in line for it. And basically, it said that it can shorten it to 4 minutes for now, but imagine what it could do as you optimize that technology. And on the other hand, there's obviously concerns of, well, you have this technology, you can use it in airports, and then who else can use it? Are you going to start tracking normal citizens, and what is the error on that? Especially if the kind of inconvenience you could cause to normal citizens who are kind of just when the system cannot recognize them.
Yeah. What's the margin of error?
I thought of that exactly that the minute I read it, and it doesn't say much about it yet.
Your face is like so close to a serial killer's face, and the facial recognition. You keep getting arrested everywhere you go. It's like, we caught him. Oh no.
Yeah.
False alarm.
No, this is not the right one. Sorry, that's just a doppelganger.
So this whole article feels very science fiction to me.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah, like a movie from like 15 years ago with facial scanners and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But honestly, on a personal level, it does get very inconveniencing. It gets very uncomfortable to be going through these kind of like personal inspections and going through the machines and standing in lines for hours and hours and hours, and having these things be more discreet and just be there and not bother people as much can really improve experience in an airport, can probably just really cut down the waiting lines and waiting time for trips and to going into the US as well. And so, I mean, despite the error margin, which will actually leave you in a room for 14 hours, and that can backfire.
I agree with you. And I'm usually pretty firmly on the side of privacy. However, I think this is just reality. The reality is the sort of anonymity, the anonymous society is gone. It's never coming back, right? And for the most part, young people are comfortable with that. Like, there's a bunch of things I would never put on social media. I think that era, like, I'm getting old, basically, right? And I think this actually probably does more good than harm, because frankly, there are all kinds of cases of mistaken identity already that probably, something like this would just clear up faster than any other mechanism. So it's probably a good thing, even with the privacy concerns.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I admit, if it could shorten my line a little bit when waiting, God, that'd be great. Oh.
Yeah.
I mean, we're already getting like full body scans, so I mean, it's not that. I mean, I'd rather just go ahead and just do the facial recognition. I already paid for like the super passports and all this other stuff too.
Yeah, it's really interesting technology, and like I said, I think we'll see more and more of it as time passes. So, all right, let's move on to wearable robots. So this was kind of an interesting article. We won't spend a lot of time on it, but LG is basically announced a robot mobility suit, and basically you can think about this as it's like an exoskeleton. So think about in a factory, you've got a bunch of heavy stuff, and now you can use this to assist, right, the human body doing that kind of work. And I'm sure there are just a ton of uses for something like this in industry, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of cool. Also feels very much like science fiction.
I want one.
Yeah, I know. Me too.
Those legs. Legs for
Maybe,
days.
maybe we could get a review copy. But
Well,
Oh.
LG, I mean, they do a great job of producing some pretty nice looking type um, products and
yeah,
just usually comfortable and things like that. So I would love to do this.
it would be pretty cool, I think.
Yeah.
Get a robot suit.
Why would you not want a robot suit?
I
Like,
mean, everybody wants one.
I can, instead of only being able to walk like 2 miles, I can now walk like 20 miles.
Exactly. Carrying 200 pounds.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's exactly. And less impact on my knees. I mean, there's a
Yeah.
lot of benefits to this, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting too. There are
Oh.
probably other cases for, yeah, mobility just in general. Hmm.
Yeah. I mean,
But
there's a,
I,
yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I just found it kind of strange that instead of having like a fully automated solution, they just decided to stick legs on you because they introduced it in kind of a manufacturing scenario.
Yeah, I could see
Yeah.
that. Why not?
Although, I mean, maybe it's related to lifting. Like,
Hmm.
Hmm.
I just think like if you had to bend and lift, probably leg and lower back.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I mean, it's probably all being financed by the military.
Yes, they probably have the militarized
Wow.
version of this.
Yeah, they've already got the version. Now they're saying, oh, we're going to do the commercial version now.
Oh, good. The robot wars are just around the corner.
Of course.
Hey, Cliff, what's going on with IoT failures?
Yeah, so I won't spend too long, Matthew, again. I just thought this was really interesting. So this comes from the vmblog.com. So the article is titled IoT failures plague 64% of users worldwide as cloud complexity surges.
Wow.
So there's a lot of data. So what I'm going to put it here is that folks are a little worried, frustrated, concerned. And part of that is, let's say, IoT in the home. So 73% of consumers are really scared that if they get a smart lock, they're going to get locked out of their home because of bugs in the software.
Sure.
68% are not buying like smart thermostats because they're worried they won't be able to control the temperature.
Well, I fit into that. I fit into that actually
Yeah.
because when I had this furnace replaced, when we replaced the furnace this winter, they offered me a Nest or a Honeywell, like not a Nest. Basically, it's probably still more than I want, but it doesn't come with the smart features essentially. And I chose the Honeywell. And for the reasons we talked about earlier, it's like I don't want to have to be in charge of keeping this thing up to date and all that.
Well, and you fit right into this next one. So do I. 81% of consumers are concerned that technology or software problems with smart meters will lead them to being overcharged for gas, electricity, and water.
That's interesting. I feel like, yeah. I mean, the reality is it's probably the opposite.
You think you'll get undercharged?
I I think your bill will go down
Yeah.
because you're using them because they are smarter than we can be. But I think
Yep.
for me, it is like I can easily understand the simple solution, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so can my wife.
Yep.
And I feel like I would have to invest some more time and energy into sort of understanding what I need to do to make sure this thing is working and continues to work and gets updates and all the things, right? So that was sort of my reasoning. I don't know if it's right.
Well, and one of the big problems they're finding is from a pure business standpoint, folks, I mean, businesses are already realizing there's additional complexity when you scale to the cloud and things like that, right? And microservices and pressures to innovate faster. But then when you add into it the concept of IoT and all these devices, they're really struggling in the monitoring and performance and providing a great experience overall, just because it's almost overwhelming.
Well, it's definitely not simple.
No, it's the complexity is how many folds higher.
Absolutely.
So it's that, and then of course you've got on top of that now you got a lot of consumers that are getting concerned because they hear about the person that got locked out or the odd scenarios happening and things like that with one or two individuals with their different devices.
Yeah, there's been quite a bit of what I would call probably bad press.
I would agree. Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, interesting article. It's got quite a bit of numbers and things like that, which I like. I always like to see more specific things versus vague and whatnot.
So I think here's my 2 cents. I think
Yeah.
that this is going to be true for consumer markets. I keep coming back to this, but I feel like IoT in the home is mostly a gimmick. Not entirely. There are some really great uses and some things that I think are pretty, probably pretty useful. And Nest is probably a good example of something that's actually a pretty good use. Like it can manage your thermostat better than a human can, for sure.
Yep.
Save you money. It helps the environment. That's a good thing.
Yes.
But I think generally, it still doesn't feel like it's hit home yet to where this is, and in 50 years, it'll probably just be the way it is. But right now, I feel like it's mostly a gimmick.
Yep.
But so adoption in homes is going to be slow, but where it is kicking is in business, right? Is in industry.
It's really funny, Matthew. It's almost the opposite of, and maybe you would disagree, but in my head, the opposite of kind of the app craze, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Apps, massive consumer adoption. Businesses were building apps just for the sake of building apps, and they really didn't have any usage for them.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I think that's true, probably. That was really a consumer-driven trend.
Yep.
And this is really an industry-driven trend.
Very much an industry-driven trend, but the consumers are all like, well, we've got to find something for consumers.
Yeah,
okay.
It's trailing. It's trailing.
Yep.
Yeah. And so you end up with things such as Samsung smart closets that steam your clothes in the closet and that can only fit in 3 suits.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly
strange,
what I mean.
It's not a home thing. It's not like a personal.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, business-wise, you can see that. Yeah.
I would agree. Is that the end of the articles for this week?
That is it. So if you have any feedback for us, shoot us a message at podcast@GearForgeSoftware.com, or you can find us at on Twitter at GearForge IoT, and we would love to hear from you. So guys, that just about wraps things up. So do you have anything fun planned for the weekend? Cliff, how about you?
Well, you and I are heading to Geek Fest, or you might want to call it Renaissance Festival. Either way, there's a turkey leg and some mead in my future.
Can't wait. It's going to be super fun.
Yep. We'll try to get some pictures, Zainab, for the Twitter.
Thank you. And for me.
Yeah, that should be a great time tomorrow. Should be super hot here, so that'll be interesting, but it's worth it.
Wow.
Yeah, Zainab, how about you?
Well, the grilling continues.
Oh.
Yeah, we had there was a big religious holiday last week, and there was a lot of meat involved. Like a lot of meat, like crazy amounts of grilling for a week or two, depending on how much you got. And so the grilling will continue, and we're finally finishing off with the heaps and heaps of fish.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a lot of protein these weeks. It's crazy.
Sounds great.
That sounds wonderful.
It's really wonderful.
All right, well, thank you so much for listening, folks. We hope you'll join us again for next week's show. And until then, so long and be well. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.